Let's do it. So the guest today, who we had the pleasure to have on the show, is Amanda Landsaw from B2B, from EndeavorB2B. I'm sorry, they just recently rebranded. And I had a conversation with Amanda on what it takes to drive the notion to the business of how you're thinking about next year and get your executives to think about what matters in the same way that you, the marketer, know that things matter. That's the balance between brand and demand. So I am super excited to dive right in. Shall we, Mary?
Let's. Here we go.
It's time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I feel like in this world, the role of the CMO has evolved. And there's so much pressure to deliver results, to do things fast, and at the same time, to still get your company out there with recognition, top of mind recall, and those other wonderful things that historically have been top of mind for B2B performance marketing leaders. I'm curious if there's anything off the bat that comes to mind when it comes to the general conversation of expectations from marketing that you have experienced. And as we go into the next year, like everything is, for people top of mind when it comes to what do I do next year based on what my leadership wants me to.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance between really brand awareness and then building out pipeline, right? Like we all know marketing for years and years has been seen as kind of an expense. And so, how do we really bring that conversation back to what marketing brings to the table and building out that pipeline and actually driving those leads so you can actually see the ROI from that? That's one thing because it's a little bit more tangible to actually say, I spent this much and we received this many leads. But that brand awareness piece is so key too. And so it's really it's balancing those two things along with CEOs and COOs overall expectations on how we're driving the business forward. And then it's also, getting the whole company, not just the leadership, on board with what marketing is doing day in and day out, and really driving that marketing and sales alignment. So I think that's going to be a big focus for people as we go into 2026 is kind of the whole gamut, right? Building pipeline, brand and awareness, and then really making sure sales and marketing are in line.
And we picked the title for today's session, ironically, what to expect when they're expecting, right? Because everybody's talking about leadership expectations. And what's interesting is that depending on who you have at the helm of the ship, your CEO, your C-suite at large, those expectations can vary. So the format of today's session is such that we had an interview with two CEOs and two COOs, and we asked them essentially two questions. What do you expect from your marketing, and when does it miss the expectations? And it's interesting to hear the diverse take on what these people expect from their marketing leader. So I would love to play clips. We have 7 clips total that we will play, kind of them talking about different sides of marketing, whether it's brand, whether it's product marketing, whether it's pipeline building, right? And I would love to ask you follow-up questions like what's your take on all of that is based on how you see that within your organization.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, clip number 1. And we're going to start with when does marketing miss the mark? It kind of aligns with what does C-suite really want? So let's see.
I think the main, look, it's hard, right? Like I think that the main reason that people come up short is it's a really hard job, right? At the very beginning, you have to figure out how to, I think you can do everything right and still fail in this job, right?
Yeah.
I've run companies, invested in companies, worked at companies where you have failures because of poor execution, poor culture fit, but I've also had times where everything was firing perfectly on all cylinders and there was just a gap on how do you explain that core value, right? I think for me, at the moment, the industry is evolving so quickly. There's so much noise around AI, and there's a lot of froth, and there's a lot of, frankly, just, let's say, creative stretching of the truth about capabilities of latest software, that I think finding a way to break through, communicate value, and get mind share is going to be the hardest thing. And I think that's so you can do everything right and still come up short.
I think sometimes like over-indexing on perfection and especially if you're in competitive industries. And going back to like, it's stage dependent, right? The different stages of the company demand slightly different things from that department, but ultimately not meeting the pace bar of the market. Like, there are no awards for doing things great close to when you run out of money, right? So like just being able to just make do with a little bit of time, a little bit of resources, and just kind of like test and iterate. Because ultimately, going back, I like the way you position. It's like, it's even for the biggest guys, like they're constantly iterating, like the Amazons, the Ciscos, the Googles of the world, they're constantly iterating over their message. And the key thing is that you do it fast, because otherwise you'll be left behind. It's
Have you, I'm actually on the iterating side.
Yeah.
I'm constantly amazed at how often stupid things work. So a couple of months ago, or last month, we put the wrong image on an ad campaign. It was like a very ominous looking finger pointing on one of the campaigns, just the finger shot of like, the I want you to, and I was so angry that it went out because it made us look terrible. It has by like 5x outperformed every other ad for this product line. And it makes me so angry. But it's like, all right, well, I guess we should do more finger pointing on our future advertisements. And there's like, if you're overly precious about it and you're like, no, this is what good looks like, it's like, I don't know, like you can just try stuff. And sometimes what you're not expecting to work is going to blow it out of the water.
I mean, for us, it's like anything that revolves around people. And then just product, but not super polished, like clearly marketing, like, ooh, look at this perfect thing. It's sort of the one-off demo that an engineer just thought up the night before and be like, look at this cool thing I did, and you put the raw thing and everyone's like, holy shit, this is cool.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting. And it goes back to the point, it's like, can we get out these things faster? Stop overthinking it. Don't spend like 2 weeks in post-production. That's pointless. Just shoot it up in Loom, get it out, and same day the next day, and move on to the next thing. Like, that's it.
So it's interesting to me how the spread is such that what they think good marketing is really differs. And I would love for your comments on kind of the difference in opinions and the pressure to create things fast. Because the content machine is the ever hungry machine. You can spend days creating content and it's a race to the bottom.
Yes, no, I mean, I think they make very great points with all of it. I do think it's interesting. I really like on that clip specifically when they're talking about how quickly you're getting out there and like doing iterations and reiterating and kind of keeping that going, because we all know marketing isn't a perfect thing, right? What hits right with one person one day is going to hit differently with another person the next day. And it also depends on what's going on in the industry that's going to hit right. And it's going to vary from month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. And so I think it is important to just constantly have that mindset, and everybody understand that mindset of iterating and getting it out there, and know, like, do you want to get things out there that have grammatical errors and just look poor? Absolutely not, right? But trying to put the perfect plan in place is difficult. And at the end of the day, we're now in an environment, right? Gone are the days of like everybody putting billboard ads in every single marketing plan that they're doing, and doing print campaigns and all these things that take a long time to get out to market and then even potentially see the ROI on it. Our marketing teams have to be agile. And that is something that we talk about at Endeavor, is as a marketing team, is how are we being agile and getting the information out there quickly. Yes, we want it to be as close to perfect as we possibly can. Coming from a control freak, that is definitely something that I don't want, like I said, grammatical errors or anything like that. I want the facts to be real, but it doesn't have to be perfect every time. And again, that campaign can perform great for 2 weeks and then just fall off a cliff, and now you're having to go back and reiterate it, right? And so I do think that's an important piece, and is spot on, because I do think a lot of marketers have a hard time doing that and pivoting in that way. I also think that it is interesting with this group on just that alignment between, what the CEO wants versus what kind of marketing wants. And I think the really important piece here is just making sure that there's open, honest, collaborative conversations that are happening regularly, because I don't know about, your CEO or anybody else's CEO. Our CEO has a very clear vision in his head as to where he wants the organization to go, right? But how we're communicating that can change depending on what he's hearing out in the industry. He's the one that's really out there, probably similar to like this event that they were all at, right? Like they're out there, they're talking to people and things are regularly changing. And so us as marketers, we also have to make sure we're having that constant communication and collaboration with our leadership team, like our CEOs, our COOs, as they're out there having those conversations and really pinpointing maybe they heard something that might resonate that we haven't heard yet. And so I do think that's an important piece to it.
And I think we might as well get the AI piece out of the way and mention it right at the beginning of the conversation, right? This race to create content fast, like they were saying, right? I've heard stories where it would be a big company like Atlassian. Carrie Lou Dietrich, for example, on one of the podcasts that I heard, she was sharing a story where her CEO saw a YouTube commercial that was in the consumer industry, belonged to someone else, and his kids commented on it and said, "Oh, this is great." So he took that back to work, said, "Why don't we do that?" And that's the continuous battle, right? Like you see all of that being marketed at you as the consumer, you get inspired, ideas come, you take it to your head of marketing. Why don't we do that? And you know that 2 days later there will be something else, and just keeping up the pace and managing the expectations and making sure that when things do go out with AI front and center, creating visuals, images, copy, all of that stuff, like that cumulative effect of things that you put out still feels like it's coherent and cohesive, very brand minded thing, when it's dangerous to let everyone to put stuff out there just to keep the pace of the expectations. Like, I mean, it's a chicken or egg, but I'm curious on your take.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think we all see it, right? You get, I mean, me as a CMO, I see what's out there and I'm going back to our marketing team of like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And so I think it's really more about how we're positioning it internally, right? Like, okay, here's this great idea. And instead of it being more like, why aren't we doing this? It's more of, what are your thoughts and how can we make this best for our organization? But doing that quickly. Again, I think there is that piece where we always have to be agile, especially in the age of AI and content, and making sure that we always have that human input to it. But I do think it really just comes down to setting that expectation. Again, that communication piece. AI is going to introduce a lot of different, I'm going to call it opportunities instead of challenges, but I think that they're, read between the lines on that one. But it gives us a great opportunity to really see how people are utilizing it best. And it's not like, as I tell people, it's not a tool there to replace marketers, but the ones that are winning are going to be the people who know how to utilize AI to make things more effective and efficient. And that's going to be the key as we continue to move forward, because it's not going anywhere. We've just seen how really rapidly it's ramped up in the last few years. It's not going to go anywhere. If anything, it's going to get more ingrained into our worlds. And so, and it's not just at the marketing level, right? It's going to be operations. It's going to be in products. Heck, now you can create agents that are essentially your CEO whenever you're trying to do public communications. And so it's really those that are going to succeed they're the ones that are putting privacy first, right? They're doing it ethically. They're doing it responsibly. They're doing it quickly. And those are all very hard things to do quickly.
For sure. And I feel like all of that sits on the brand side of the house, right? Content creation, putting things out there, right? And this split between brand versus demand, something that I swore people have been talking about from the beginning of this year. So let's listen to the next clip. We got the conversation on brand versus demand and what do people want. Now, would be curious to hear your take on what they say.
Absolutely.
I think if I'm going to be really practical, the end goal of marketing for a .com is going to be revenue generation. But I think that that's an end goal. And I think that as you look at the breadth of marketing, you have many other milestones that you're trying to achieve. So you're trying to get visibility. You're trying to get awareness. You're trying to ultimately generate urges to know more, urges to see more, which leads to demand, and ultimately then you get transactional. So marketing is key to all of that, but I would have to say that we invest into marketing to generate more business.
For me, I mean, revenue, obviously, pipeline generation. Though I'd say more and more, I'm recognizing that there's a huge value in building, as you start to grow and scale, the brand itself, the name recognition, and that the investments you're making in that today pay dividends, maybe not in the short term, this quarter, next quarter, but they pay dividends next year and the year after, because the more well-known you can make the brand, to some extent, the less investment you have to make in marketing activities in the future, right? So you kind of have to be doing a little bit of both of them. And I would say that my view on that has shifted over the last couple of years, where previously I would have been just like, it is all about MQLs and generating leads and generating pipeline. And I'm slowly being educated to change that viewpoint.
I think.
So that was our CEO of CaliberMind, Eric, my boss. And hopefully I participated in some of that education where he realized that, things happen a year from now, but the struggle is real to communicate to our leadership who are also under pressure from the board, from the C-suite, from shareholders, whoever, that there is a number to meet. And at the same time, if you do it sloppily, you can hurt the number next year. So what's your take on this?
For sure. This question in that clip is really good timing. So Endeavor used to be Endeavor Business Media. We rebranded over the summer. So that conversation between brand and demand is very much at the forefront of our mind. So we rebranded from Endeavor Business Media to EndeavorB2B because Endeavor has grown rapidly. We're about 7.5 years old. And we've grown through acquisition of media companies over the years. But with that being said, we've also grown in a lot of our other areas, such as marketing solutions, research, intelligence, data. So now we're not just a media organization, we're a marketing, intelligence, and data organization as well. With the media piece, and we have over 90 brands across 15 different industries. And so the media piece still is definitely foundational to our business day in and day out, because it's what it builds the audience for us to then be able to fuel all those other products that we offer and solutions that we offer. And so then moving that name over to EndeavorB2B really gave us that opportunity to now highlight those capabilities more so than just people thinking, oh, Endeavor Business Media, all they do is media, because we're so much more than just media. So the rebranding piece has been very much top of mind for all of us as we're going to market, trying to educate people on who is EndeavorB2B. We have to have that messaging out there, right? So you see more of our CEO, Chris Farrell, out there. You see more of our C-suite out there having those conversations around what is EndeavorB2B, because people know our brands. They know the 90 plus brands that we have that they're reading the content from every single day, but they don't know our organization as a whole as the foundation for that. And so we have been really hyper-focused on that brand awareness and brand building this year, with now that we're kind of past that initial launch, really honing in on demand. And it's to your point earlier, that conversation of brand versus demand, because the board, right? You have numbers you have to hit. Your CEO has somebody they're having to report to as well, right? They're having to have those conversations with. And so I think they both have to go hand in hand, but I really like what your CEO said in that clip, because there is a time and a place for both. It is not one or the other. I think that there are opportunities where those two actually do intersect. Think of them as a Venn diagram, right? Where they actually do intersect, they come together, and they have to be progressing forward, because you have your long-term and your short-term vision in place, and strategies and tactics and goals that you have to hit, and you can't do one without the other. So I think that it is the age-old question, but we're in a time where if nobody knows who your brand is, they're not going to trust you enough to help you build out your pipeline. So I think that's an important piece to it.
Yeah, Eric, definitely a very keen observer when it comes to stuff. I very much respect him for that, just being able to accept ideas that might be controversial to someone in his seat, because like you said, everybody has a number to meet. And what do you do when you're a smaller business? And clearly CaliberMind is much smaller than EndeavorB2B, but that motion of MQLs or whatever it is, MQAs, like, so a number of opportunities, right? I see competitors in the space very minded with those numbers, talking about it all the time. And you realize like it's a race to the bottom. It's a finite thing because 26 will come, 27 will come, right? 2028 will come. And you have to stay out there with credibility in the masses. And the same is true for any other brand, big or small, right? Some of them, like Salesforce, have advanced and have already paved the path. Others are still in the process of getting there for sure.
But to that point too, I think in an age of AI, everybody being able to consume anything they want to on their phone, on their desktop, on their laptop, whatever it may be, on a tablet, people have access to information anywhere and everywhere now. And so it's the brands that bring the most trust to the table that are going to win out. And I say that with some caution, because I do understand that people are also okay with scrolling and getting like a headline news from some whatever outlet that they may or may not know about and take that as truth, right? That is what it is.
3-second attention span.
Yes. But I do think it is still very important to have brand awareness and trust at the forefront of your mind, because that's just gonna, especially in the B2B space, right? That is going to take you to that next step versus just a quick scroll and seeing a quick headline. If you have that credibility behind it and people can trust it, that's going to take you to that next level.
So talking about trust and kind of explaining to the market what you do, a lot of that is very much traditionally rooted in product marketing, right? And especially for, I wouldn't say new organization, but probably new marketing motion or kind of updated go-to-market motion that you guys are going through. It's probably all of kind of top of mind for you, front and center, that you're trying to educate the market, trying to get them to think about you in a certain way, explain what you do. So our next clip will focus on the discussion of what's the role and the fit of product marketing and communications to the overall picture of what those expectations are. So let's take a look.
I agree that it's stage dependent. I think in the early stages, the primary job of marketing is to help the company discover how to most effectively communicate what and why they do what they do, and communicate it clearly and simply to as many people in your target ICP as possible. Not necessarily to the broadest possible group, but to the specific group that you are trying to communicate to. And then to use that as a mechanism to get leads into the company. I think revenue is an output, and I think revenue cannot be solely attributable to marketing. You can have a great marketing handoff to sales, and then sales can completely not be able to close. And so for me, whether I think the term MQL is a bit fuzzy, but can you effectively reach the target ICP? Can you communicate why they should care? And can you get them in the door to whatever your sales motion is, whether that's inbound, outbound, whatever that ends up being. And then priming the market for future outbound. One thing. So what I've always been told is that, and I think that this has been borne out in kind of my experience, brand building, at a certain point, all marketing is brand marketing, right? Yeah. Nothing Salesforce says means anything at all. Like, it is completely fuzzy, it's completely nebulous. Yeah. It's about whatever latest buzzwords tie to them. Early on, you don't know, and no company, no matter how effective they are and how smart their leadership is, knows how to communicate their value perfectly to the target customers, right? And so I think in that early stage, it's all product marketing, or predominantly product marketing, while you figure out how do you explain what you do. And then as that iterates, that naturally builds the foundation of the brand, and then you start adding on top of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I think that the difference I've seen in brand is, and this may be a little bit particular to us and our company, but in our space, there's pretty heavy competition. It seems like there's always these sort of new entrants and things like that. And brand helps you build a little bit of a moat around the company. People start to recognize it. Like, they think of your name and they have a vision, a little bit of like who you are as a company, the people are, and in some markets that can be very important. Not all markets.
I mean, from a practical standpoint, essentially it just lowers marginal CAC, right? Because you have to spend less time educating. The more people who know, the less you have to explain why they should talk to you, so that you get in earlier.
But it also helps you differentiate, so that if you're competing against somebody, you're kind of head to head, and maybe it's a feature, someone's comparing features. But if they know your company, they know your reputation, they know your brand, and they can count on you, they feel they can count on you, you're more likely to win the deal at the end of the day. All things kind of else being even. And it's so hard today to differentiate. Like, I can see companies where they're differentiated like this, but how do you prove it? How do you show somebody without them actually implementing a software solution? So you need to be able to, like, So when everybody can go on the internet and make themselves look like this, then what do you do? How do you differentiate? I think brand starts to get you that, right?
So I feel like this is the eternal question, right? I mean, content production to differentiate, that's one thing. Everybody looks big on the internet, that's another thing. And the fact that you still have to articulate, even with the army of custom GPTs and prompts, what you do. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I think it's a tough one. I mean, it really is, because to their point, at the beginning, you're really focused on product because that's probably going to get you in their ear a lot quicker than trying to communicate like the value as a broader organization. The other piece to that too is people's attention span, as we were just talking about, right? Like people's attention span is just, we don't have the time. We want you to tell us exactly what you're going to be able to bring me right now. And so I think all of those are really important pieces to try and bring it full circle so that you can get the best point across the quickest. Because another challenge, I don't know about you all, but we see it just across between all of our brands and then capabilities, and just it's getting harder and harder to get in people's inboxes, right? Like that's a constant challenge, because now we're in a time where maybe people aren't traveling as much. And so one of the best ways to get in front of people is through their inbox. And people just think, well, a name is a name, an email address is an email address, just send them an email. But that's getting harder and harder to prove out. And the lists in general, people aren't as weary or as scared to just unsubscribe as they used to be. And especially if you're doing some cold calling, cold emailing, those types of things, people opt out pretty quickly. And so I do think that it is extremely important to make sure you're putting that value first. But we struggle with it too on, if you look at, you have all these different frameworks out there, right? You have a story brand framework where you're putting the audience member in front of you as like they are the hero of the story and you're just there to help support them. And while I think that's a great framework, where does your product fit into that? Right? Like how does product marketing specifically fit into that framework of like, so at the end of the day, we're all trying to get our information out there. So how do you do that without just trying to tout like, here's who I am and here's how I differentiate from everybody else that's in this space? At some point, you just have to say what you have to say. And that again could change as your ICPs change. As your business grows, your organization grows, and there might be shifts here or there, your ICP might be changing. And so, we have over 7,000 clients across EndeavorB2B. And so how is it that we're honing in and targeting each ICP of those various segments, because it is different from industry to industry in which we serve.
And you hit on something which is so true for ultimate success today, with all of the technology, especially in B2B, being such a non-negotiable kind of front and center table stake, right? And what I see when it comes to marketing leaders, there are two different groups. The first group, they have come through the background of brand and communications and sometimes product marketing, right? So they're really, really strong with that messaging and positioning, what differentiation, talking points. But when it comes to operationalizing it, the execution arm of like the strategic, so here's our message, we think it's fantastic, it's going to land well. How do we deploy it? That's where they struggle, because demand gen and marketing operations and data affinities, to them, that's not something that they're a native of based on their previous experience. And being able to bridge that gap and develop that understanding of what do I do with all the tech, how does it play, how does it change my strategy, how do I deliver things, how do I segment things? To your point, 7,000 customers, that's a huge database. You can be the most brilliant strategist, but if your execution piece does not happen, like, it doesn't really matter. So I feel like the background matters a lot, but also recognizing that sometimes you will not know either one side or the other as well as you would like. So being able to recognize that and not apply the same playbook that you did at your last business, where the focus was on one or the other, and kind of evolve and recognize that need and recognize the new ICP, is also so important.
Yeah, and I think you bring up another good point of generalists versus specialists, right? How has the role of marketing changed over the years too? Now we're asking marketers not only to be creative problem solvers, creative copywriters, right? Creative people, innovative thinkers, but now we're also asking them what's the data behind it. So we see that across our organization. We see it across, as I go to various conferences and talk with people, they see it in their organizations where we're asking marketers to really truly understand the data behind everything that's going out, that's coming in, the audience segmenting. Now you have HubSpot admins, you have Salesforce admins, you have all these people who are specifically dedicated to trying to help these systems connect and get the systems right and primed for your sales and marketing organizations. But at the end of the day, they're not necessarily the same people. That's where marketing ops comes into play, right? That's why you have marketing ops organizations, and then you have marketing organizations within that. And so I do think that's an interesting piece that I struggle with and talk to my team about a lot of. I have to remind myself, okay, we brought you in for product marketing, maybe not like me asking you to go in and create this massive dashboard with all this information that's coming in isn't necessarily fair, but that's what I need, right? I need somebody to be able to do product marketing and then also be able to go in and look at the data on the back end and bring all that together. Because we are in an age now where, we're just not getting the funding. I think most people will agree with this. We're not getting the funding to have these 50, 60 people team marketing organizations. And so we have to really make sure that what we're doing and who we're bringing in is able to meet the goals and the KPIs and those next steps and strategies that we need them to, but also being fair to them.
Let's take a look at Eric's take. So CaliberMind talks to a lot of CMOs and marketing leaders, and it's interesting, like what you said essentially is what he observed. So let's look at the conclusion that he drew from that.
Ooh, okay.
I'm in a unique position in that all my customers are CMOs, so I see huge amounts of what's going on in these organizations. The biggest thing that I see is not understanding how to market at the size of the company they are at that point in time. So I often see people come in and they have a playbook and they execute that playbook. But the problem is they're executing a playbook for a company that's at a different stage or a market that's a different market. And so they're like, I've got this playbook, I come in, I do this, and it doesn't work. Then what? Well, then they leave and they go find another place to execute that playbook.
That's every executive, that's the biggest executive failure period, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So what I see really work is when you have people that come in and either they're the right fit for the stage, they're the right fit for like kind of where they're at, or they can, to your point, they can iterate very quickly and they can find the right fit for the market you're going after, because every target ICP and persona react differently. You market to them differently. And if you have the perfect marketing, but this group of people that you really need to get to doesn't react to this marketing, it doesn't matter because they don't see it. And there may be something completely different you need to be doing to get to that group of people. Mm-hmm. And the people that test until they find, I got some signal over here and something's working here, and then they iterate and they hone in on it, they find something that works. I've found that's where it's successful. The challenge is that tends to, like you were earlier, that shifts over time.
Are you in a position, given your product and given the authoritative kind of voice you would have with CMOs, are you able to tell them that, hey, you're going about this wrong? Would they listen?
Can we tell them? We do often have those dialogues with their marketing operations people and their analytics people, because that's what we do. Mm-hmm. Do they listen? Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes no. Sometimes that's a very internal political thing that's going on. You have people that are, the best organizations, the ones that we work with that are really dialed in and working, they do have a very tight link between sort of a marketing analytics team that looks at data and figures the stuff out, and the CMOs and the leaders they have, like, I get this report every month and we sit down and we look at it and we go through it and then we make our decisions next month based upon this data. When I see that, I actually see things start to really kind of get better for a lot of organizations, because they're doing, to your point, that they're iterating and they're finding things. The organizations where you have this group that's really looking at the data, has all these great things, but the CMO and the rest of the executives aren't listening, they're just running their playbooks. It kind of doesn't matter what the data's doing.
So an interesting observation. Again, marketing department is so dynamic. You got creative people, you got data people, and you as the leader, you have to bring the two together and you have to align them against their own KPIs. And I've always oftentimes set on the demand gen side of the fence, right? Demand gen, performance marketing, revenue marketing, kind of bleeding into marketing operations. And being an individual contributor, the one thing that always felt unfair to me when the year would start, right, and we're about to start a new year, the marketing leader would say, okay, here are our deliverables. In a lot of cases, they would be very much pipeline oriented. And it felt like all of those deliverables, I was the one carrying them. Like, well, you realize that we have 6 people over here doing blogs, the graphic design, product marketing, like all of the deliverables, are with my part of the marketing department. How is this fair? So being able to like articulate what's that deliverable when it comes to metrics for the creative people is also important. And again, that's to Eric's point. It's hard to bring everybody within the marketing organization, as diverse as they are, on the same playing field.
It is. It's a challenge. And we have it, I think we're in a unique position as well, because what falls under my realm, I've got corporate marketing, I've got customer marketing. So they're focused right on customer, client retention, new name acquisition, some of those types of things. Corporate marketing is focused on new name acquisition more at the corporate level. And then I've got audience, which is focused on our readers, right? The people who are coming to our websites, who are subscribing to our newsletters, subscribing to our magazines. And that's actually the world in which I come from, is that audience side of things, which is very, very data driven. And so I feel like that gives me an interesting perspective to be able to come in and say, okay, I get where we're coming from, of like, we need these MQLs, we need SQLs, right? We need all these types of things, but let's work backwards. How are we going to get there with the with the technology that we have, with the people that we have, with the collaboration we have amongst other teams? And so I think it's been, I've been in this role for a little over a year now, and it's been very interesting to see how we're bringing sales and marketing, that alignment really close together. But then we also have editorial on our side, right? We have over 120 editors at Endeavor. And so we also have to make sure those things are aligning together as we're looking at the various pieces of marketing between audience, corporate, and customer. And I agree. I think like there's no perfect solution to it all. We do the very best we can, but it is interesting because it goes back to the data piece, right? You have to understand what the data is telling you, and do you have the right people in place that are going to help articulate that? You can have the best dashboards in the world, but what does it mean, right? Like, what is that, and how is that going to change your behavior? I think that's another key piece to all this too, right? Like, I think Eric said it well with this, is like, you have these people who are, you have people in the marketing ops side that are bringing this information to the table, who are explaining this, and then the rest of the marketing team is figuring out, how does this change what we're doing, and how do we keep moving forward? Again, you can have all the data in the world, all the dashboards in the world, but if you don't know what it's telling you and how it's prescribing you to move forward, then it's kind of a waste of time.
For sure. Context and data literacy, the two things. And you nailed it when it comes to the role that the head of marketing is playing in all of this. And I think you kind of mastered that part of the marketing challenge, or leading marketing within a larger organization, is being that chief alignment officer. Because I think even Gartner put out a stat, and it was somewhere in my sheets, where 65% or something like that, 60% of what a marketing leader does overlaps with other departments. So it's never you kind of, singing your song and dancing your dance. In a lot of cases, you're encroaching is not the right word, but maybe kind of, touching other areas that overlap with other people. People can feel apprehensive about their turf and about your involvement, right? So being able to align everyone, that's the primary function of a marketing leader, being chief alignment officer. And the next clip that we're going to watch, it kind of advances this notion. How does leadership, or do they recognize this need for alignment? Do they understand that a head of marketing and their responsibilities go beyond just tactical execution? So I would love your commentary on this once we see this.
Bjorn brought up a really interesting point. So if we assume that from an overarching perspective that marketing is there to generate revenue, marketing could be nailing it. A receiver can catch every single ball, no matter what, thrown to him, but that doesn't necessarily win the game. And marketing is really a crossroads of the company. And so you can put in all the due diligence to have the right brand representation, the right messaging, the right product marketing, but are the other functions within the company really tracking along with that and really absorbing it and working with marketing? Or are they looking at marketing going, do your thing and then we're going to sell? And where there's that disconnect, I think marketing can get blamed for that. And is that fair or not? This goes to my second point. It really all comes, and this is another point that you all have been mentioning, it comes down to measurements and analysis. And in that workflow that I described at the beginning, you really have to understand what's moving the process along and analyze actual data and say, this is working or this is not working. And if it's not, how do we adjust? And quite frankly, I think a lot of organizations and a lot of marketing personnel are trying to get the job done. And the measurements and the analysis are sort of like, yeah, that's great. We've already done that. Let's move to the next thing we need to get done. But that analysis is critical to making the kinds of adaptations that improve your marketing effort. And I just think sometimes we just get so busy and we move on to the next thing, and we need to stop and work with marketing and measure success. And if we didn't get what we needed, we need to adjust.
I feel like this is so true. Trevor summed it up well. Marketing gets blamed for all of it at the end, right?
Right, for sure.
And it's funny, I even had a slide for one of the decks where it's marketing under the microscope, right? And maybe it's because you have so much data and you establish the precedent of, we look at things, people feel comfortable asking you, how is this thing doing? How is this thing doing? To be able to at least have some kind of a reference point to understand how the department is moving forward. And it's probably true for any size of the company where marketing leader is continuously under the pressure. And if you can articulate those nuances and, what you observe well for people to understand, then you're winning. If not, then you will be continuously blamed.
Yeah, and I think another piece that I was kind of hoping to hear in this was the marketing tech, right? Like if you don't have the right marketing tech in place, that makes a lot of those types of things pretty difficult, to be honest with you. Now you have your marketing team that's spending a lot of manual time trying to make connections in a world where there's so much technology out there. And yes, that's a challenge in of itself, right? But in a world where there's so much technology that can help automate a lot of that and help bring that to light. But I mean, I agree. And I think though that comes back down to, I personally love like what you were saying earlier about the alignment piece, because I love the collaboration. I think it's so important that the C-suite is all collaborating and on the same page. I think it's important that the various teams, right, that you've got marketing and sales that are in alignment. You've got audience and editorial that are in alignment. You've got marketing and audience that are in alignment, right? And then and also that sales coming into that as well. Because without that, everybody's going in their own direction, and it's really hard. We've all heard it being in marketing, right? Silos. People work in silos. And so unless you have that collaboration and that alignment, then you're going to continue to have those silos. And I think, I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but it was interesting. They started talking about KPIs from an organizational perspective, right? All the various departments have their own KPIs. But as a C-suite and as an organization, are the KPIs that we are being held to, right? Are those also known at all levels of the organization? So everybody's producing those KPIs that are aligned with that top one. And that sounds like a very common sense statement to make. But when you start actually looking at KPIs of other departments, you're like, hang on, how does that help drive the business forward versus just helping drive your department forward? And so I do think that there's some interesting pieces to that. And if you can bring all those together, that will at least make just blaming one department, including marketing, harder than, if you're actually moving together as a ship forward.
I think it's absolutely a team sport. And I think nowhere else does it manifest itself as much as in marketing. because you can only do so much as an individual contributor. You can be the best one on the planet, but think how many people talk to the market within your org, and if each one of them disseminates their own message, it doesn't matter what you deploy, it doesn't matter what campaign you run. The market will take home whatever they heard from 100, 1,000, 10,000 mouths, which could be different from what you said. But to your point earlier, as far as like they did not mention technology, I never even thought about it as I was filming it. But maybe they didn't mention it because it's not even on their radar. It's probably like, just like how my husband thinks about laundry. It just does itself, right? He doesn't have to worry about it. So to them, technology is just there and it just makes things happen, right? So again, back to that collaboration and communications, like if you don't put it front and center and you explain in basic terms on your fingers what it is that it does, what is the problem, what is the need, like it does not even enter the consideration set. And the question becomes, what do you do all day? Do you know how long it takes to send an email? Would you like to know? Right?
Right. As opposed to being able to automate some of that and really getting smart about, this person did this in that email. So then I can trigger this deployment and we can start actually breaking things down and getting things working more in a smarter way versus just, now we don't have to have a team of people just sending emails out. We can have them focused on other areas and make that a whole lot more effective and efficient. I agree.
And to your point about agility.
Yeah, the technology piece allows that agility too. I mean, it really does versus having to spend hours upon hours just filtering through spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets, the eternal curse of any marketer, spreadsheets, for sure. So, as we kind of close out this conversation at the end of that interview, which by the way, we were filming that in Charleston, South Carolina. So when you heard the bells in the background, at a certain point during the day, all the churches start ringing the bells. It's like, there's nothing you can do about it. You might as well just take it and just make it through the 5 minutes of the bells ring and then move on with your day.
Embrace it. I bet it's very nice and relaxing. Looks like
it's very different. It's not the sirens of New York, but it's, it's there. So as we were filming that last question that I asked them with all these things considered, imagine you're going out there hiring your first marketer. And that first marketer could be either a small company getting the marketing department kind of stood up, grown up marketing department for the first time, or it could be a large company as people go through mergers and acquisitions, then kind of shake out who does what. They switch responsibilities, maybe they add roles or they completely kind of revamp their marketing department. I think it applies in both cases. It was interesting to me, the thinking behind what's the most important skill set in a marketer, given that we kind of covered the whole gamut of what marketing does, right? So let's watch this one, and this is the last one. And I would love for us to kind of summarize all of it and bring us home in terms of like, as you think about going into next year, what is that one skill set that you should maybe think a little bit more about? So let's take a look.
First?
Yeah, you're good, Joe.
Navy SEAL. I'm kidding.
Swiss Army knife.
Swiss Army knife. No, what I want is somebody who, I love people who can go very deep into theory, but I want somebody who broadly understands how an organization works. And you were talking about this earlier, about the persona or the people out there consuming the marketing message. And so that breadth of understanding to me is really, really powerful, and how to act along that spectrum, or even to look and go, wait, our persona has shifted a bit, our product shifted, and now we need to make this adaptation. And I think that needs that breadth of understanding to make those adjustments. That's what I would do, is go for somebody who's a generalist.
Can I take the opposite side of that bet?
I'd love it.
Okay, thank you. We got this going. So here's my counterpoint. At the early stages, I think no one has a better pulse of customer, or should have a better pulse of the customer, than the founder. And it is a relatively straightforward couple of week sprint exercise to extract from that founder who the ICP is, why they're buying, what they care about, and putting that into a value. The legwork in the early days comes from how do you test which message resonates, what channels, how you get it in front of them. So if I had to have one, I would optimize for, early stage you always go for generalists, but I would focus on the side of who can get the message into as many channels and as many test cases and iterations as fast as possible. Because one thing I've seen, and a risk, is if you get a product marketer, they try to pull that away from the founder. And I think it's hubris to assume that, and Greg and I have this conversation at CIQ all the time, I'm a decently sharp guy. I don't know what this market wants. He does. He is the market, right? And there's blindness that comes with that. Like you can be too close to the problem. But I think there's a risk in having somebody try to own the message completely too early, because that, I think, needs to sit with the founder for as long as possible.
I mean, obviously, having a generalist is huge, but they're hard to find. If I had to pick, I'll be honest, it depends a little bit on the company. For a SaaS company like what we do, I'd probably go demand gen. And just because like it's so important to build that pipeline early on, that having somebody who, and you only have so many dollars to spend, and you can really overspend on ads and your demand gen if you don't get it right. Having somebody who can get that right and start to feed those pipelines, you start to build up. If you get that working at the start, almost everything else can be kind of built out of that. And if it doesn't work, a lot of this other stuff, you know, again, for SaaS businesses, these type, if you can't get that working at some level, you have to do, you're a sales-led organization, you got to go to sales, right?
Interesting split, right? They went through the whole thing from a generous, and again, whether it's a small company or big company, kind of putting someone at the helm of the department. What's your take? And I know this is, there are many opinions. Depends on the company too, but based on what you've seen, what you've experienced.
I mean, I think Bjorn hit it on the head with like that message, especially in the beginning. You need that information from the founder. You need the information from the CEO because they are going to know it best. That changes though, right? Like as the company, it was mentioned earlier, as the company grows and scales, that can change. You have more ICPs that are coming in. You have, at first you have your low hanging fruit and you have more ICPs that are coming in. I do agree though, that I think a generalist, in my opinion, a generalist is going to get you there quicker because they should also know how to deploy that message in multiple channels, right? Even if it's at a basic level, they'll at least either know people who can help or they know how to deploy those messages in specific channels. And so that's where I would say for like an organization who's just starting off is, and that's my preference too. I prefer to have more generalists who can hit the ground running and get things done quickly versus we had the conversation earlier about like perfection versus getting it out there. And oftentimes those specialists really want perfection. And again, there's a time and a place for that. Absolutely. But if you're just getting started, I would say you need to hit the ground running with the right message that's coming from the founder or CEO.
So as we go into the next year, like if you were to leave people with some words of wisdom in terms of when it comes to meeting those expectations, anticipating those expectations, communicating what's happening on the ground in the most effective way, what should people be mindful of? What should they audit themselves on as they go into these conversations, whether it's the planning or the metrics and the goals for the next year or hiring for their department? So full gamut, give us some wisdom.
I think first and foremost, you have to make sure that you and your C-suite are aligned. You might have one vision in place and the C-suite has a completely different vision in place based off of whatever that may be. Maybe the CEO had a conversation with a board member and it's changed the outlook of something, right? There are conversations, even if you're involved in those conversations at the get-go, there are conversations that are being had where you're not involved. And so putting your plan in place, your goals, your strategies, your tactics, putting that in place and making sure that your CEO, your COO, CRO, if you have one, everybody is aligned, and then being able to build that for the rest of the organization from there and communicating that out. I think at the end of the day, to be the most successful, you have to just have like clear, honest, open communication and being able to receive that feedback as well, right? Just because you come to the table with this plan or this strategy in place, don't be hurt if somebody kind of takes a red line to it, and that's okay. At the end of the day, we're not here for what makes us feel good. We're here for what's best for the organization. I think if you keep that at the forefront of the mind, it'll help drive success.
I think the notion of alignment, either way you look at it, and the chief alignment officer title, I think that's what proliferates based on what I'm hearing. Because I think it's the silver lining in anything that marketing does, either communicating things out, bringing things in, or even doing strategy and planning for next year.
Agreed. I mean, because you can't we can't work in our own little bubble, right? The organization won't succeed. You won't hit your goals. You won't hit your KPIs, and you're not setting your marketing team up for success by doing that either.
I love it. Amanda, thank you so much. This has been an enlightening discussion. Appreciate your time, appreciate your opinions, and I'm wishing everyone success in planning strategy and communicating that to their leadership as people go into 2026.
Thank you, Nadia. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
And I think with this, we conclude season 2 of Hitchhiker's Guide. For those of you who want more information and all the things that Amanda and I discussed, and I'm super grateful to Amanda for making time and coming on the show, there's a trilogy in the resources section titled Marketing Means Business. It covers all of these things: how to own the conversation, how to own a seat at the table and have a voice in the board meetings, how to tame the algorithm and own the bottom line. So make sure you grab all 3 of those resources. And Mary, what is your one wish for next year?
Oh man. Well, I think in the past I've had bigger eyes than my stomach when it comes to budget. So I don't want to wish for too much. I think I want to wish for more of this, honestly. This series has been so fun to work on, all these lovely clips we get and kernels of insight from speakers that I get to watch and share as CaliberMind. So more Hitchhiker's Guide would be great.
That's the one wish that can be granted, because we will start the year with Ashley Foss from Atlassian sharing on how to build, with a framework, a thought leadership and influencer motion. So make sure that you sign up for season 3 once we open the season and have all the episodes teed up. And with that, thank you guys so much for giving us time, for staying with us for so long. We'll see you in 26.